Welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday. So last week I talked about general warm-up, getting blood flow, how the blood flow works when you start to move, the purpose of raising core body temperature, ligaments, tendons, so forth. So today I want to look at specific warm-ups. So let's say I was going to a gym and I was going to bench press or squat or whatever. The first thing I should probably do is go spend a few minutes either before I got there, get my blood up, walking 5 to 10 minutes. I don't want to burn through all of my glycogen stores. I want glycogen available for the heavy pushing. So I just want to get moving, maybe 5-10 minutes maximum on a treadmill. More than that, I'm going to diminish my ability to exert strength. So I'm not doing cardio before I work out. I'm doing warm-up, which is just enough to get my body blood flowing. My jumping jacks, my jogging in place, my walking on the treadmill, whatever the case may be. So I've got my blood flowing now. Now I go over to the bench press, just as an example. Do I put on my full weight and just go? No. I need to first do a lighter weight, maybe even 10, 25%, no more than 50% of what I plan to work out with. So if I plan to work out with 100 pounds, then I would warm up with 2 to 5 reps with 50 pounds. If I plan to do 200 pounds for 10 reps, let's say, I'm going to do 10 presses with 200 pounds, 10 repetitions, then I might put on 100 pounds and do 5 repetitions. So everything is cut in half by quarters. And then a little more and gradually, but I don't want to burn myself out. So my warm-up is just a little, and then I go right to the workout. Same with karate. So I've done my general warm-up, I've moved, I've run, I've duck walked, I've push-upped, whatever I'm going to do. I've got some general blood flow. Now we want to warm up specifically for karate class. Depending on the style, the teacher, even within the same style, the teacher's approach to warming up will be slightly different. But typically we want to have a systematic fashion to make sure that all our joints and all of the muscles that move those joints have gone through a range of motion that will prepare me for whatever I'm going to do in karate. So for Seidokan, for us Seidokan people, we typically start with the wrists. We might even start with the fingers, but typically we start with the wrists. We're moving our wrists in and out, we're circling them around, we're waving them, we're shaking them. We might even do some rolling or some gentle pre-stretching of the wrists in a variety of different positions. We move from the wrists to the elbows, making sure our elbows, this is one that a lot of people kind of ignores, their elbow joint. Very important to the warm-up. So I go from my elbows. Now I go into my shoulders with some circles, forward circles. We can do all sorts of things for the shoulders. We go front and back, make sure we open up the chest, open up the scapula in the back by pulling the front, open up the chest by pushing to the back, do some crossovers. So we've got forward circle, backward circle. We can do alternate circles in both directions. We can do some windmills. So there are all sorts of things we can do to warm up that shoulder area. Maybe some gentle light stretching, but again, remember stretching, separate topic we're going to look at next week. Then we move into the neck. Is my neck important? Absolutely. Not only for being able to turn quick, if you've ever turned quickly and got that shooting pain, that's because your neck was not properly warmed up. Now I want to give a caution here. Head circles, typically people push down and around, but if I'm pushing down, I can feel a pinch in my cervical vertebrae here. So if I'm going to do head circles, there's 2 ways to avoid crunching down. One is to lift, so as I tilt my head this way, I'm actually thinking of lifting this ear and pulling this shoulder. So I'm elongating here. Then as I go back, I'm lifting with my chin so that I'm not compressing back on my neck, but rather lifting with the chin. Same thing, I'm lifting this ear, pulling this shoulder down, and then as I go to the front, I'm not tucking my chin down tight here, but rather I'm lifting the back of my head as I push down. So if we're going slowly, we can elongate and stretch those muscles, and that's one way to avoid compressing the cervical vertebrae, because head circles are kind of a controversial thing in exercise science. but that's one way to avoid it. Another is just to move really quickly in each direction. I wouldn't do that until you've done the other one first, okay? A third way that is a good way to avoid the neck circle but still get your neck warmed up is simply do tick-tocks, which is left, and again I'm pulling up, not pushing down, pulling up, left and right, then the same thing, pulling up, front and back, and then looking shoulder to shoulder. And if you do those movements instead of head circle, you accomplish the same thing without the risk to the cervical vertebrae. So we've gone wrist, elbow, shoulder, neck. Now we can go into the torso. So for my thoracic vertebrae, my upper spinal column, still a little bit in the shoulders. So I'm getting ready for any kind of twisting motions. Again, these are the karate specific preparations for our joints. Then from here, we'll go into the hips. Now there's a lot we can do with the hips. Typically, we're gonna do some hip circles this way, and then the other way. The other thing we can do is some hip rotations. There's a great way to work on engaging the hips. You can use a large staff, any kind of a stick, but trying to keep the stick in place, but loosen my hips to rotate for the punch. You can go back to the earlier video on koshi and the importance of the use of the hips in the center so we can loosen the hips. We can even use this as I'm doing my twists. We can use this here as I'm doing my hip circles. So just a way to check. So I've gone thoracic vertebrae into lumbar vertebrae. Then we can kind of do a combination thing, which is to go full body circles all the way around. Some people will do it with the hands on the hips. Some people will do it with the hands coming around as a way of reaching. But either way, I'm getting my entire back core area loosened up, twisted, ready to rotate. Then we move down from the hips into the knees. I typically will do some knee circles in each direction, and we can do out and ins. We can do this way. Then we'll do some light squatting, little press on the kneecaps, pretty standard here, okay? So we've gone all through each of those joints. Then depending on the school, we may even spend some time doing some ankle flexibility and ankle warm-ups, moving the ankles through a range of motion, even just circling the toes in each direction, okay? Holding them up this way. So now we've gone through all of the joints. Now we can get even a little bit more movement specific in the warm-up. And Goju-ryu, for example, and I think Uechi-ryu does this, the Naha systems tend to go from the feet up, where in Seidokan we tend to go from the hands down. Either way, as long as there's a system, I've gone through all the joints. Now, going back to karate specific movements, one of the things that I will typically have my classes do is work on shifting. We may do that just from the front stance, pressing the hip, pushing the knee, pulling back in the posture. So I'm getting a good stretch here, but working on rotation of the hip, pushing through. Then we'll go into the lunge this way, so that again, and I might just lightly add a punch to get that hip rotation. And then we'll do sitting over to the side and sit into the stretch here. Toes up, heel down, nice low sit. Then we repeat on the other side, hip rotation. Again, I'm pulling back the shoulder that's on the front knee side. I'm pressing the hip through and forward. And even though this hip is pulling back, we're trying to push the knee forward so that again, I'm working in that punching motion and working the hips as part of the warm-up. And again, into the lunge position with or without a punching motion. And then again, into the sitting on the side. Now, we might go lunge, 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 lunge. Or sorry, hip twist, lunge, lunge, and then sit side to side. How you sequence is less important than going through those movements. That pretty much covers all of the joints and the movements that we're going to do. We might then spend some time working shikurachi shift, making sure that it's coming from here and not from the shoulders or anything else, that it's all core centered, making that shift. Then we might just start from yoi, step, drops, step, drops. And so going through karate specific movements as a way of getting specifically prepared for the movements that we're going to do in the class. So that would be just a quick example of a specific warm-up. If you're going to do break falls in class, or you're going to work on throwing, then part of your warm-up might be doing break falls and rolls before you get into the techniques. Depending on what the class is going to entail, we want to prepare our bodies for that specific action. That's the concept of a specific warm-up as opposed to a general warm-up. Okay? Next week will be the conclusion of warm-ups where we incorporate the Hojo Undo, transitioning from general to specific. The Hojo Undo as a part of the warm-up, different than Hojo Undo as a workout. And then the series begins on stretching. So thank you again for joining. Hopefully that helps give you an idea. If in your class the time is limited and you find something isn't getting warmed up that you need, either come early and do it yourself, or approach the instructor and request, hey, can we warm this up because I have such and such an issue with my hip, my knee, my ankle that needs extra time to get ready. Don't be afraid to approach your instructor and request some help in areas that you might need extra work on. Okay? Once again, thanks for joining today's Seidokan Saturday, and until next week, keep practicing.